What's happening, everybody? How the hell y'all making out? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Crash Bang Boom podcast, where today's guest is drummer Mike Sharp out of Austin, Tejas, who plays with Uniform, Mirror, Impalers, as well as his own solo projects. We get into writing and recording the new Uniform record, Shame, his 67 Ludwig kit that he got from his dad, the first show that he played, and a whole lot more. So I hope y'all dig it. Crash Bang Boom podcast can be found on iTunes Podcast, Stitcher, Luminary, Google Play, Podbean, and Amazon Music Podcasts, as well as my SoundCloud and YouTube pages. Feel free to check out any of the previous 200 plus episodes. Give me a like and or a subscription, or even a positive review or something like that if you could. The support is appreciated. Shout out to my sponsor, New Orleans Record Press. If you're looking to release vinyl for your next comedy set or your band or one of your projects or whatever it is that you're looking to put out on vinyl, going over to NewOrleansRecordPress.com to check it all out. They have options for electroplating, mastering, design, packaging, vinyl coloring, and a real-time quote generator so that you can add it all up. They also print 12 and 7-inch records in 150 and 180 gram variants. So hit them up, and that's NewOrleansRecordPress.com. With all the touring industry and venues being affected by this COVID madness, help out any way you can in the form of purchasing live streams for bands or lessons, tutorials, and masterclasses from your favorite musicians, as well as websites like SaverStages.com. They're looking to provide some assistance to venues that are very much feeling the burn in these crazy times. So help out any way you can. All right, everybody, here we go. Mike Sharp. New Uniform record, Shame, is out everywhere. If you dig big, industrial, noisy jams, they got what you're looking for. Get your hands up on it. Crash, bang, boom.
Crowds go mad with joy.
Yeah! Mike Sharp, what's happening, man? How are you doing?
I'm good, man. How you been?
Pretty good, man. It's strange times, obviously, and I know as you being a musician with a few different projects and whatnot and looking to release something around this time, everything gets postponed, and obviously you can't really tour so much or at all to support it aside from doing live streams and whatnot. So first of all, congrats on the new Uniform record. Super cool. It sounds great.
Thank you.
Yeah, man. What have you been up to the past few months? It's basically since March, since all this madness started, man.
We actually got lucky that we recorded that Uniform record in February, because I'm sure a lot of people are going to have their quarantine records come out within the next year or so, like everything everybody's been working on.
Totally.
We got ahead of the game on that one.
Nice.
Otherwise, with them, we've been working on some remixes for other artists. I had some solo stuff come out, but that's not really drum related, and because that's actually the project where I'd make sure not to play drums.
Gotcha.
Other than that, not much as far as that goes. There's another punk band I'm in called Mirror that I drum in. That 7-inch is coming out in the winter on Todo Destruido. But other than that, not a ton of musical projects. We've been trying to figure out how to maybe live stream, but since I'm in Texas and they're in New York, it takes a lot of planning. So that's probably going to be in a couple months.
Right. Well, yeah, that brings me to one of the questions with Uniform being a New York band. Are you based out of Austin?
Yes, I've been in Austin for 10 years.
Gotcha. How did you end up hooking up with those guys, with them being out of New York, and how does it go on, I guess, with writing and recording and everything else with y'all being spread out?
Well, we have mutual friends, and one of them at the time was the manager of Uniform, and he said they needed a fill-in, and I hadn't really filled in for anybody in a long time. I had just played with, close friends and whatnot, but I wasn't doing anything that summer, and this was 2018. I think 2018. Yeah, and they just asked us if I wanted to go along. I liked the band. I had heard them just through Sacred Bones and whatnot, so I figured I'd give it a shot. And we didn't really get to meet before I joined. We all met in LA, had one practice, and then kind of hit the road for 5 weeks. So it was kind of stressful, but it went really well. Every now and then Ben would show me a new riff or something he had, and we kind of play around during sound check. And I think they felt it was sort of a symbiotic thing where I would be able to bring ideas to the table that they might not. So it'd be good to write together, and they asked me if I was interested, and of course I was.
Yeah.
And they do collabs and stuff with everybody. They do stuff with The Body. And,
right.
Some other people. And I they're natural collaborators, and I try to think of myself as such, to where I'll take in every idea and try not to stomp on it, but try to just bring something new out of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of responsibility, but it's really cool that they were interested in my voice creatively.
Sure, man. With the collaborations that you mentioned and their work with the Body, Body, for those who might not be familiar with them, it's kind of another sort of noise industrial duo in the case of them, and I think y'all certainly in Uniform certainly have some of that noisy industrial kind of thing happening for sure. So if you were working with Uniform in 2018, were you working with them when they were doing the collaborations with the Body as well and doing some of those live shows?
They had already done the first one,
Okay.
and I'm not on it, and I'm not on either of the records. And actually, that was around the time that my wife got pregnant. So actually, them taking, like, filling time with Body stuff and recording Body stuff kind of gave me a break to be a new dad.
Gotcha.
Which is, a lot of bands, they'll just be like, cool, well, we're going to find another drummer, but they've been really supportive of it, actually, which is nice. I guess that doesn't go for everybody, but I didn't have a lot of tenure, and they were like, well, that's cool. We got this Body stuff coming up. Take your time being a new dad, and we'll do some short tours here and there. And even when writing the new record, I was like, yeah, I mean, I still can't do like insanely long tours just yet, because the kid's so little. The baby's so small he doesn't understand no.
Right.
So it's pretty hard. You gotta be here.
Totally.
And they've been really cool with that too. But yeah, I'm not actually involved in the Body stuff, but if there is ever another collab, I don't know, I'd like to be involved in it because I do enjoy those records.
Gotcha. So how old is your son then?
He's 16 months now.
Gotcha. Yeah, I have two sons, so I hear you. That especially those first few months can be pretty hellish. So any help around the house is always greatly appreciated and needed. It's delirium-inducing times those first few months, in my experience.
Absolutely.
When it came time to, I guess, writing for Shame, how was that working out? Was it a lot of file sharing and kind of remote work, and then getting together when you could to try to get everything down that would ultimately be that record?
Yeah, so we had some riffs, like I said, that we had played around with at sound checks and on the road. And then when we decided, like, the date, generally when we were going to record, about 2 months before that, we met up. They actually came down to Austin, which was really nice of them, because I have a practice down here, and
Nice.
we just drilled for like 8 hours a day on every idea and combined the stuff that worked, or cut little things here and there. And it was like that. It's that part of writing where everybody has all their ideas and you put them together, and then that's like also the part where you get to be honest with each other, like, yeah, we shouldn't do that, that sucks. Or
Right.
like, or wow, I can't believe you did that, let's make sure that that's actually the focal point of the song now. So we did all that, and just kind of set the date 2 months later in New York, where I would come up and track. But
Gotcha.
between that time, we have kind of cell phone demos of everything, and basically we got to write down more ideas of how to cut things up, and just generally how the flow of the album was going to work out.
Right. Where did y'all end up recording it when it came time to do that?
All the tracking was at Strange Weather in Brooklyn. Ben recorded a lot of stuff there, and he was doing all the engineering. Him and Garrett, who works there. It was a great room. I didn't bring anything up there. I didn't bring cymbals, pedals.
Really?
I didn't bring, which is what you usually have to lug around on the plane, as you know.
For sure.
But I got up there, and they had a lot of really great cymbals, great kits. And what was interesting about how he recorded it was that he wanted to do each song separately, like do all the instruments for each song and then move on to the next song, as opposed to,
right.
I don't know about you, I'm used to just, all right, we do drums first, and you do
Yes.
that the first day too.
Yeah.
And you're just drumming for 8 hours straight, just
Right.
trying to get all the takes you can get.
Absolutely.
It was kind of interesting to take a break in between, like once I kind of nailed the takedown however I wanted to, and then listen to everything else kind of build up around it. And then you have basically you have all the bones of the song, and you go, all right, next, go back. And you're like well rested, and your mind basically clear of that song. So you kind of get to start over fresh. It was a really cool way to work.
Huh. Yeah, I haven't had the best experience doing that. That's just me and the kind of pace that I like to keep and the momentum. Sometimes the blocking up the momentum of it can end up affecting you one way or the other. And so for me, I've always preferred what is the usual case, which you mentioned as well, which is just like, all right, let me get in there, let me knock my shit out, and then y'all can do what you need to do. But let me get in and get out of here.
Yeah, that's basically every other recording experience I've ever had, and usually it's punk bands and stuff, and we're recording at a friend's house or just tracking at someone's house who has space,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to get it done before their roommate gets home from work.
Right.
Like that.
Yeah. Right.
I'm used to kind of keeping up the momentum and then just being drenched in sweat by the end of the day.
Exactly.
Like, all right, that was all the best ones I got.
You
But,
got it.
yeah.
Absolutely, man. Well, you mentioned being out in Austin for 10 years. What brought you out there in the first place?
Oh, I'm from Texas. This was just the place to move.
Gotcha.
It was kind of just where I landed because a lot of my other friends ended up moving here for college, or honestly, a lot of people moved here just to play music and start bands. And it was easier here than San Antonio, where I'm from.
Gotcha.
And when I really landed here, almost immediately, I was asked to join Hatred Surge, which is where I met Chris.
Okay.
From Impalers, and he's in Power Trip and Mammoth Grinder.
Yeah.
And that kind of just started that kind of network of bands. You end up starting with all your friends, where somebody will switch from guitar to bass, or somebody will want to sing for a band,
mm-hmm.
or they'll have a different list of bands to rip off. Like that's where that was kind of where that started. So I've stuck here since, because a good network of musicians and whatnot.
Totally. At some point, you mentioned Chris from Power Trip, and of course, thoughts to Riley and that whole situation, and I hope those Power Trip guys are doing okay, all things considered. But at some point, you ended up doing Impalers with him, and then I guess you play drums in that, and then Chris does the vocals in that, I believe, right?
He does vocals, but we write basically the whole band's instruments together, because he can rip anything. He played guitar in Mammoth Grinder and then bass in Mammoth Grinder. He's played both in Iron Age, which is another band that, had a big loss recently. But and for the first big Power Trip show I went to, I think it was them with Lamb of God and Anthrax.
Oh wow!
Chris was actually on guitar, and Connor from Red Death was on drums.
Okay.
And so I got to see him play guitar on Power Trip for a tour once too.
Damn, it's crazy.
We'll kind of riff out just guitar and drums for a while, and then decide where drops are, and then, like we said, I'll do all the drums up front once we decide how that's going to sound. And then he usually spends 80% recording everything else and then finishing vocals. So
wow.
he definitely carries most of the weight in that band.
Yeah. 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 You mentioned the punk rock thing. I mean, certainly Impalers especially has got some pretty upbeat, pretty burning BPMs on some of these songs that I was checking out with the Cellar Dweller LP is the one that I was listening to. Yeah, super cool. High energy, man. High energy.
You got to play it fast.
Yeah, man. How is that pacing yourself live to be able to get through a set of it? Or the set's relatively short, and do you still feel as though you need to be somewhat mindful of pacing yourself to keep up that momentum and sort of maintain that high level of energy?
Yeah. So that band, for a while, I mean, I would be surprised if we've ever played over a 20-minute set.
Wow. Yeah.
And and most times we knock out 9 songs in 12 or 13 minutes. So a lot of times I'm actually rushing. But
wow.
One of the stamina things, especially since I've gotten older, I don't really drink before I play anymore. And I used to, being in punk bands and with your friends and playing shows around Austin, half the time you're going to be drunk when you play.
Right.
So cutting that out, basically not doing it at all during the day and just eating because I'm a big guy, my stamina works better fast than slow almost, because I'll kind of get ahead of myself and get in my head while I'm slow, and then end up just jumping the tempo all over the place. Probably only, and most people, it's one of those things where the other members of the band will say, "I didn't hear anything," and you're like, "Well, I felt it, and now I hate this show and I hate this set."
Right. Oh my God, man. With going back to sort of the uniform sound with that sort of, again, noise industrial thing, are there any bands out there that do some stuff that's in that vein that you dig in particular?
I was figuring out how to play for them, I guess, besides just, trying to, because Greg Fox played on the record that we were supporting when I joined. So I was trying to basically get as close to his playing as I could, although he's insane.
Totally.
But a lot of drum machine bands like Dead World, obviously Godflesh,
Mm-hmm.
and then a lot of really faster death metal with drum machines like, well, not even faster, but just kind of ignorant, really, like Mortician.
Right.
And then kind of a lot of those like around 90, like late 80s, 90s Swans records, where the drums are just huge and really like monolithic. And with Uniform, I try to make the drums take up as much space as possible, but also try to just stay as simple as possible, like it's just a giant drum, like it's a drum machine playing a drum kit.
Right.
I guess.
Mm-hmm. That's super cool.
There's some drum machines that have this kind of like swing function where it sounds like the drum machine has actually had too many drinks, and it's kind of it's like the hi-hat will be quantized right on it, but all the other beats are kind of just way behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was trying to do on the new LP with a lot of the slower parts where it's almost like lazy and kind of slurred, but it's still kind of pounding at a steady pace,
Right.
So yeah, that's how I kind of go at them, because I like the stuff with the drum machines, so I have to make sure that it's something I'd listen to. You know what I mean?
Totally. Since this whole thing went down over the last few months, has there been any particular records that you've been digging and feel are especially apropos of how bizarre the world has gotten as of late?
I've been kind of trying to stave off the kind of momentum anxiety that I'm pretty sure most musicians are feeling. Like,
yeah,
I feel like if you're not writing and you're not touring, then you're in purgatory. You're not moving at all.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of I've been listening to a lot of more kind of ambient stuff to kind of just set my mind at ease.
Mm-hmm.
There's this Greg Foat, F-O-A-T record called Symphony Pacific, where the drummer he's more in like a samba, like bossa style, but he's really tight. And then the rest of the band is all these huge synths and
cool.
Guitar instrumentation's really lush. So there's that. And then feeling a little more stressed out, I've been listening to, let's see what's come out this year. There's that new Faithless Burial record.
Mm-hmm.
They're a metal band. They had this record, Speciation.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, really brutal, really cool. So I get the opposite ends of the spectrum on that.
Right.
So those two and a bunch of stuff in between.
Gotcha. Well, what's your story as a drummer, man? At what age did you pick up the instrument, and why the drums in the first place?
My dad was a drummer, and I was actually trying to play guitar with some little Strat pack I got in like 8th grade.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point I mentioned, like, I have a drum set in the attic. And he actually told me, I went up there, got it, and set it up as best I could, and played in the garage. And he told me long time later that those were like the worst 2 years of his life, was me like figuring out how to play drums in the garage.
Absolutely.
Especially because he didn't sit down on the kit much in front of me until I was like a little older, and you could tell I was sticking with it.
Mm-hmm.
And he sort of more of a bluesy, funky drummer. He's like David Garibaldi a lot.
Sure.
So he immediately taught me all this stuff about ghost notes and flams and all these little things that I was just I was trying to play by ear for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And his kit was it was the 67 like Ringo kit.
Mm-hmm.
The one.
Oh yeah.
And I've had a couple other kits, but that's the one I've always kept, and now that's the only one I have. And it still sounds great, actually.
And it's your dad's kit?
Yeah, it's got the stamp on the inside, 67.
No way.
Yeah, and I still use that on punk records and all kinds of stuff. And I'm pretty sure he just played like Stevie Ray Vaughan covers and stuff with his friends.
Right.
And stuff earlier than that, because he was playing at 68. So
wow.
He told me he mostly played in cover bands and stuff in North Texas. And yeah, but I guess most of my learning was just from playing with people and figuring out what worked and what didn't work, and then just trying to keep my stamina up and get my tempo better.
Totally.
But yeah, for probably about 5 or 6 years, it was just grind and punk. So all the fast and hard hitting stuff always felt a lot better to me.
Right. What'd your dad think about the music that you were listening to and playing along to? It sounds like you were driving him a little crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. He was one of those guys that always said the insult in the nice way, like he said he would say, "Oh wow, I could never do that," which also means he would never do that. He would
exactly.
Probably he wouldn't be caught dead playing a blast beat or a D beat.
Right.
But I could tell that he enjoyed that I was into it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. That's amazing that you have your dad's drum set, and of all things, it's a '67 Ludwig. Those late '60 kits are revered kits and notoriously awesome sounding. Everything about them, great looking, just awesome drum sets.
He's the one who got me on big cymbals too. Like, I think I had some cymbal pack that I bought pretty early on, and he saw that there was like a 16-inch crash in, and he was like, "Man, I used to have hi-hats this big," and he'd just like make fun of them. And at one point, I was playing with all my big cymbals were all 24s, because Pisces used to make 24-inch crashes, and it was just a mess. It was just me trying to compete with myself on volume.
Right.
And trying to do catches or anything like that was just impossible. But
totally,
it's like playing with big sticks. Once you do that, and then you size down, you're like a master at it.
Absolutely. I went down and I was out at my dad's house recently, and I ran across the flyer from the first show that I ever played, and was looking at some pictures from that night. What do you remember about the first show that you ever played?
It was at VSW Hall
in
San Antonio with my high school friends, and we mostly just covered Green Day, Weezer, and I think I was straight edge, probably just because I was pretty much just too scared to drink. But
right.
and then they snuck in a Sublime cover that I played along to, and that was. I remember a lot of our friends were kind of staring at us, like not sure what to think of us, because they hadn't really seen any of us play before, but they were also, like screaming and stuff when we were done. And the girl whose birthday party was, she was like, "Can you guys play that set again?" And we were like, "No, that's awful." To play the same songs again? Like, no. Although that's people make livings off just playing the same like 3-hour loop of songs over and over. So
totally.
I don't know, maybe we should.
I know, right? Oh my God, that's funny. Yeah, when I go back and listen to like my early bands, I'm like, wow, okay, obviously this was the '90s, and we were listening to Primus and Helmet. It's just like, all right, it's those early bands. If you're not directly playing their songs, so much of what you play and just collectively write and perform is so derivative of and so direct to those influences that you had, just because you're just figuring it out on your instrument, and you're wearing those influences right on your sleeve, and they're so apparent, and in revisiting it, it's like borderline embarrassing. It's like, oh God, this is so ridiculous, like revisiting this.
It's funny how you loop around back to the stuff you liked when you were younger, though, because
yeah,
if my competent musical friends ask me now, "Hey, do you want to start a band that sounds like 90s Primus and Helmet?" I'd be like, "Yeah, do it." That sounds fucking nuts. I would love to do that. Or something like, "Yeah, we're going to make a band that sounds like Unsane and Prodigy." I go, "Yep, I'm in.
Wow,
let's do
it." That sounds totally awesome. I'm such a fan of both of those. I only recently, kind of, in speaking of sort of the rabbit holes that I've gone down since all this began, there are a few. One of which was, it's funny you mentioned Prodigy. Just watching like live performances of them, and man, what a fucking wrecking ball of like incredible energy that band was live. God damn.
Yeah, it looked insane. They were, I mean, obviously it's 25 years after their heyday, but they were going to tour the year that Keith Flint died, and then he died like 2 months before the date that was in Texas.
Right.
And I never got to see him, because by the time I was going to shows, it was like the early 2000s, so they kind of weren't coming over here unless it was for like big festivals.
Mm-hmm.
Dance music and stuff, and they were the only band in that vein that I liked for so long, besides like, I don't know, Crystal Method, and some other stuff, maybe KLF, like right. Not, I didn't know enough about it to go to another state and go to some 3-day rave that Prodigy was playing, you know?
Right. I know, man. When I watch those videos, I'm like, wow, I didn't. It's crazy. I really wish I would have seen them back in the day, because I mean, I think the closest that
Same.
I came to that was like seeing Ministry in the early '90s, and I tell you what,
Oh man.
Ministry in the early '90s were one of the baddest fucking bands on the face of the planet.
Yeah, I bet that was incredible.
They were
That's
absolutely incredible, man. It was insane.
that's right in the Ministry sweet spot too. So you saw all the best material too.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. Like I saw him. It was the Lollapalooza for that year. So I think they had just put out Psalm 69 like a month or two prior. So it was a good bit of that. Obviously, the mind is a terrible thing to taste, and they were just
Yeah.
it was complete like ridiculously high energy. The show was on, the lights, the projections. They had two drummers. It was just, I mean, it was crazy. Anybody that would have had to have gone on after that band, it must have been terrifying, man.
Yeah, you'd have to totally have to change direction just so people wouldn't think you were a lesser version of it. So hopefully it wasn't a metal band, industrial
It
band.
wasn't. No, I think in fact, if I think that was '92, I want to say. So I think the Red Hot Chili Peppers, interestingly enough, might have gone on after them. But I think they would switch it, and at times I think Ministry was actually the closer, which I fully understand. I would hate to have had gone on after that band. It was crazy.
Despite the amount of fans Red Hot Chili Peppers have, they are just kind of a band playing songs. They're not going to have Ministry show.
No
So,
way.
yeah.
No way in hell. Yeah, it was, and it's wild. I don't know if you happen to have read the Al Jurgensen autobiography, but my God, that sheds light on just how insane everything was going on behind the scenes with that band and the drugs, and him throwing like acid into like a bottle of whiskey and sipping on that like throughout the show, and just fuck, man. It's just like, what?
Yeah, that sounds pretty badass. No, I haven't read that book, but I rediscovered how much I love reading during all this because I was tired of looking at my phone. So I'll put that on the list.
It's highly entertaining, and yeah, if you're a fan, it's I tell you what, man, he has like all these ulcers, and not to give away too much of it, but I swear after I read that book, I felt like I had acquired ulcers just from reading it. It's so crazy, man. That dude just
And that
absolutely.
your problems as a musician don't really, or they kind of pale in comparison to his, probably.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And he's such a crazy looking dude, especially like now with all the piercings on his face and the tattoos. I've seen him up close because I interviewed the drummer Derek of Ministry, and I met Al. They were in the hotel, and I was like, wow, man, this dude looks every bit as crazy as that book was reading it. I mean, this is the guy. That's the face. Okay. Everything kind of makes sense now. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, he's got a lot of miles on him.
Yes, he does. It's incredible that he's alive, period. I mean, honestly. Well, you mentioned like being in San Antonio. Were there local bands, or was there? I've spoken to Dave McLean, who now plays with Sacred Reich. He's from San Antonio, and he told me all about how San Antonio was really like a rock destination and a rock capital, especially in like the '80s. And he was just telling me the shows that he would see and the bands that would come through there. And I'm just curious, like what some of the awesome shows that maybe you saw growing up that were blowing your mind.
Man, the Flyers from the 80s in San Antonio are crazy. And also, you're led to believe that Slayer played there a lot more than they did because there was a San Antonio Slayer.
Exactly.
But,
Yeah, Dave McLean was in that band.
oh, yeah, okay, that makes total sense. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Also, that band is not bad. They're not Slayer, but they're not bad.
Right.
Yeah, I was mostly going to shows in the early 2000s, so that's kind of when a lot of the most of the best stuff I saw was like Boston hardcore bands coming through, like Mental and like Bane and stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
And those were the shows. Those were my friends in high school were into hardcore, so those were the first couple shows I went to.
Gotcha.
And then of course there was like metalcore stuff coming through, seeing like Converge
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of stuff like that. And then bigger bands would still stop there because we had an arena and Austin didn't. So of course I would, I'd see shit like the Family Values tour when I was in high school. I saw a bunch of new metal bands.
Right, of course.
And saw Primus actually.
There you
go. but like local shows and stuff like that, there were a couple local like metalcore bands, and it was cool that they opened for bands like Breathe or Resist or Converge or stuff like, or Curl Up and Die.
Right.
But coming to shows in Austin, there were a lot of bands up here like World Burns to Death. And when I moved here, there was bands like Sacred Shock and some other stuff like that had been Desconocidos.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of just like local punk bands that were really pretty new at the time, and doing a lot of like cool DB type stuff and Japanese sounding stuff. And that was just like a whole new world. It was really cool to break out of the whole like Boston youth crew thing and metalcore thing and kind of just fall ass backwards into punk just by moving here and going to shows with my friends.
Nice, man. Yeah, there's an interesting scene. Not that I mean, aside from just going down and playing like South by Southwest, I know that's kind of its own thing. But I try to keep tabs on just local bands from down there. Every now and then, someone will post something online like, "Hey, like throw down your favorite local bands," and it's always it's so much cool stuff. That's how I found out about the band Street Sects from Austin.
Oh yeah, I love Street Sects.
Yeah, the super cool, man. I really dig those dudes. Again, that's kind of got like some industrial punk rock noise thing, shit happening, which is really cool.
No, we did a Uniform like small headlining Texas tour because I guess they just wanted to squeeze that out, and Street Sex played one of them, one of the shows.
Nice.
I think they're homies with Verdan or someone, but yeah, they're really cool.
Yeah, man. Oh, here's one for you. I don't know if you've had it or not, but have you had the frozen avocado margaritas that are in Austin?
Yeah, I believe that's Cura's.
Yes.
Yeah, that place's food is actually really good.
Hell yeah, it is.
I usually get the avocado margarita when someone asks. It's funny, someone from out of town asks if I know where you can get that. I'm like, yeah, we're going to this place.
Absolutely.
It's very good. I'm more of a shot and beer guy usually, but
I hear you.
I do love a good frozen.
I hear you, man. That's funny. You're the first that's actually had them. I've talked to quite a few people that live in Austin and that were not aware that was a thing. And they're like, they like margaritas and avocados. Well, I'm like, well, there you go. That's your ingredients. I would imagine you're gonna enjoy it.
Yeah, it's odd because it's not sour like lime or sweet like so many other flavors of like I can't drink like a strawberry margarita.
Right.
Much like it's too much like someone melted a popsicle.
Mm-hmm.
But like, yeah, the avocado one, it's just like getting drunk off an avocado. It's pretty cool.
Absolutely, man.
Taking a shot of guac or something.
Exactly. Well, I know everything's kind of up in the air as of now, but are there any plans going forward for the rest of this year and into early 2021? You mentioned that there's another record that you have coming out. Didn't you mention that something's being released in early 2021?
Yeah. There's been Mirror that I'm in with a singer from Wiccans and some other people from Creaturis and Bosca. That's 7-inch that's coming out later this year, and then Uniform is working on some remixes. We're doing something, another record that's got kind of an exciting twist on it. So
nice, right on, man. Well, dude, yeah. Again, congrats on the Uniform record, Shame. It sounds great, super cool. I'm glad that y'all put it out. I mean, I don't know, did y'all have any hesitance to put it out because of the timing, or was it like, actually, you know what, this is exactly what we should be putting out right now?
I mean, we had the plan and the release date before everything.
Gotcha.
I mean, the general release when things were starting to get shut down,
mm-hmm.
and we were kind of shooting for September. And I don't know, the context of the record, a lot of the themes and stuff that, I didn't know any of the themes until Verdan basically explained them to us.
Mm-hmm.
But they became more prescient as stuff started getting worse.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Uh-huh.
I don't know, putting out like a big like angry slab of yourself when there's so much to be stressed about and stuff, it feels a little selfish, but it also feels like other people can use it.
Yeah.
And it's gotten a really good response, so I hope that some people do get that out of it.
Absolutely, man. I think I would have to say that I think it sounds pretty apropos in my experience. So congrats on putting it out.
Thanks, man.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Well, Mike, it was good talking to you, my man. Enjoy fatherhood and all the other shit going on right now. And, at some point, we'll have to catch up in person, man.
Indeed. Yeah, you too. Until next time.
Absolutely. Good talking to you, man. All right, everybody. Thanks for hanging. Thanks to Mike for rapping. Definitely good to catch up with him and pick his mind about Austin, Texas, and, of course, frozen avocado margaritas and his 67 Ludwig kit. And last but certainly not least, the new Uniform record entitled Shame. Definitely cool talking to him about the processes involved with putting that thing out. Sounds great. We'll catch you all in the next one. Crash, bang, boom.